Am I a romantasy girly now? It's a possibility. Hi everyone, it's Kaylee and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss a new subgenre that is really making the waves lately, and that is romantasy, which is romantic fantasy. Now, as a teenager, I was a fantasy girl. I grew up on Twilight, Hunger Games, Divergent, and I know some of those aren't really fantasy, they're dystopian, that type of thing. But that was my childhood, that was my youth. Vampire Diaries, if you're really hardcore into vampires and that, L.J. Smith was amazing, and she had so many series. The Secret Circle, Vampire Diaries was hers. Yeah, and I read all these as a child and I loved them. And then of course, Harry Potter by the author we shall not mention. I grew up on those. So I've always really enjoyed fantasy, but I have a hard time with fantasy that has its own world, if that makes sense. Like, take for example Harry Potter. It does have its magical world, but in essence is just set in London and in a castle in Scotland. Whereas things like Sarah J. Maas and the ACOTAR series, they are set in a completely new world that is completely made up from the author's head. And I have something called aphantasia. And if you've ever heard of aphantasia, what it is it's the inability to see something in your mind. So let me explain. If someone were to tell you to picture a star when you close your eyes, most people can picture a legitimate star. When I close my eyes and try to picture a star or anything really, all I see is black. I see the back of my eyelids. I don't see anything. And so because of this, if it's not something that I can look up a picture of or know what it looks like in my head, then I can't imagine it. So I have a problem with high fantasy worlds like in ACOTAR. I read the ACOTAR series. Well, I read up until, I think it was Nesta took over narrating. I read all the books by the original narrator. I didn't really like the sister, so when it switched to her, I'm like, no, peace out, I'm done. So I haven't finished it, but I had a very hard time getting through those books. I had to force myself to read them, and I think that's because I couldn't imagine what was going on. I couldn't picture what was going on because it was happening in this like fantastical realm with all of these courts that no matter how much the author explains them, a written description doesn't help me because I can't picture it. So unless there is like an actual, like a movie or it's set in a place that I can picture, like in Harry Potter, I can picture London because I can look up legitimate pictures of London and I can look up pictures of castles in Scotland. So I can read those and I understand what's going on. But with high fantasy world building, I can't. So then Fourth Wing came out a little while ago. We know what big hype that was. And I read the book. I wasn't gonna read the book, but it was all over everywhere. So I decided to read the book and I enjoyed it. There was a lot of it that I didn't understand and a lot of it that I still to this day don't understand, but I enjoyed it. So when she announced the second one, Iron Flame, I decided that because I had already read the book, like read the physical book, I read an e-copy of it, but still, I read the physical book. I was gonna try listening to an audiobook version. And if you follow my channel, you know that I love audiobooks. I listen to like 70% of my romance novels on audiobooks, but they're usually like, short books are like 7 hours, but they go up to like 10, 11 hours for just a regular length fiction, romance novel. And so when I can get through like 3 or 4 of those in a week, but fantasy novels, because there is so much world building, they are so long. I can't remember how long Fourth Wing was. I want to say it was 21 hours and Iron Flame was 28. But I decided I was going to give it a try anyway, and I was going to listen to Fourth Wing and see if I enjoyed it that way. And I loved it. Like, I think part of my problem with my aphantasia, and it's maybe the reason why I read so fast, is that I tend to skim descriptive paragraphs because they don't really, just a second, Percy, good boy, okay, lie down, sorry, is that I tend to skim descriptive paragraphs because I can't imagine what they're describing, so I tend to skim over them. I really enjoy books that are more dialogue heavy because that to me makes sense. And that's why I'm a big romance fan, because a lot of the romance, other than when they describe the characters, which I'll get into in a second, a lot of a romance is dialogue, basically. So, but I realized that I was skimming over all of these descriptions, and in a fantasy, that's a good chunk of the book. So when I was listening to it, I couldn't skim over it. So I was like hearing things and like reading things that I didn't read the first time when I just read the ebook version. So I ended up enjoying Fourth Wing like 10 times more when I listened to it versus when I read it. So when Iron Flame came out, I listened to it, even though it was 28 hours, I listened to it. Luckily, I'm to the point where I listen at a 2x speed. So even a 28-hour book still only takes me roughly 14 hours to listen to. So it's not so bad. But if you're not listening at a 2x speed, 28 hours is a commitment in a book. But I decided to give it a try, and I think I may be hooked on the Romantasy genre. I think I may be. Like, it's bringing me back to when I was a teenager, and I really, really enjoyed all of these like fantasy, dystopian, YA books that I loved. But now I get those same books, but I get the spice level for adults. So it is like perfectly hitting that sweet spot. So if you are a Romantasy person already, I am just starting to dip my toes into it. So I haven't read really anything Romantasy other than Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. So if you have recommendations for Romantasy, please leave them in the comments below. Preferably either series that are already completed or ones that are near completion, or even if they're standalone, because I've got enough going on and I have the worst memory because I read so many books that part of the reason I listened to Fourth Wing before Iron Flame came out was just because I knew I wasn't going to remember half the stuff that was in Fourth Wing if I didn't read. Like, I try to if it's a series where you need to like what it's important, like not like a romance where they're standalone interconnected, those I can read whenever. But if it's like a fantasy series where like each book is connected and you need to know what happens in each one, anytime there's a new book, I have to like reread the whole series, and it takes forever for me. So if you have a series that's either already completed or it's near completion or it's a standalone, hit me up. Even if it's not one of those, like hit me up anyway. I want recommendations. Please don't hit me with Sarah J. Maas. I have read ACOTAR. It wasn't my favorite. I'm just not a Sarah J. Maas fan. I just wasn't a big fan of the ACOTAR world, and I know she has another series and she has other things, but I've tried Sarah J. Maas. I did it. I tried it. I don't think I want to dive deeper into her. So if you have any other authors, let me know in the comments. I'd love to give them a try. And definitely make sure that any of your recommendations have an audiobook version, because I think that my Romantasy sweet spot is in the audiobooks. And I tell everybody, give audiobooks a try. Even if you don't think audiobooks are for you, they definitely are. Like, no one's saying you have to sit and listen to a 28-hour or even a 7 or 8-hour book in one sitting. That is not realistic. But if you have the chance, like when you're cleaning, you just put in your earpods, put in your headphones, and just listen to an audiobook while you're cleaning. Or if you have a commute and you need to drive anywhere, it's perfect. Heck, I even put on my earphones and listen to audiobooks in the morning after I've had my shower while I'm doing my hair and doing my makeup. Like, that's half an hour of reading time right there. And if you read at a higher speed, the more you listen to audiobooks, the faster you can listen to them. Like, when I first started listening to audiobooks, I could only listen at 1.2 speed, 1.25 speed. But now I find that anything slower than 2, I will go down a little bit slower if it is a like a British narrator, or if they have an accent that it's harder for me to understand, then I'll sometimes go lower than 2. But in honesty, some narrators, because I have some narrators that are like I love and I'm a really big fan of, and I know their nuances, I know how they talk, I can bump it up even higher than a 2 to go to a 2.5, 2.25. So like, if you think you are not an audiobook person, you never know until you give it a try. Like, even when I'm making my son's breakfast and lunches, he's off doing his thing and getting ready, I just have my earphones in and I'm listening to audiobooks. And yeah, it's so much, it's such an easy way to get reading in. But yeah. So yeah, maybe I'm a romantasy girly. I didn't think I was. Like, I was really, really, really hesitant. When this whole romantasy genre came out, I was really hesitant about it. But I think I might be a romantasy girly. I don't know. Give me some recommendations. I gotta try more than just Fourth Wing before I dedicate myself to the romantasy genre. So please, please, please comment your favorite romantasy books. Thanks for watching. Bye.